All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have everybody here on this Tuesday, January 30th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, as we normally do. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So we are going to start off the show, talk about the latest news in the coaching carousel. Mostly it has to do with coordinators. We'll also briefly touch upon Michigan hiring their head coach to replace Jim Harbaugh. Well, they're really just kind of promoting from within. So we'll get into that. Then in the second part of the show, which is the main topic, we're going to get into a GOAT discussion. We'll talk about where Patrick Mahomes kind of ranks, amongst some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So we'll get into that. I know that's a discussion that people love to have. Which I'm kind of saying sarcastically, but it's something that listen. We're kind of approaching. We're getting closer to the off season now. I mean, the Super Bowl is the last game, and that's it. So this is some of the things that we have to talk about because there was only 2 games played this past weekend. So there's and of course we got 2 this week and next week to get to the Super Bowl. So we got some time we got to fill in, some gaps we got to fill in until we get there. So. We'll talk about that. Then in the third part of the show, I want to talk about, more about the Lions. Dan Campbell and Jared Goff met with the media, for their closing press conferences. So I just want to talk a little bit about what they said, so we'll get into that. And then the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Chiefs. We'll talk about the Kadarius Toney situation because that's something that's made some news, and I just kind of wanted to go into that and give you my thoughts. So, that's the rundown for the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about some of the latest coaching changes. So we'll talk about the Eagles first. So obviously they let go of both of their coordinators. They brought in Vic Fangio to be their defensive coordinator. And they also recently brought in now Kellen Moore to be their new offensive coordinator. And he obviously spent the last 2 years with the Chargers, or at least it was last year. Oh yeah, no, it was just for last year. He obviously was the offensive coordinator with the Cowboys for some time. Then he went to the Chargers. Now he's going to be with the Eagles. He was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys from 2019 to 2022. With the Cowboys, his offense ranked in the top 4 in points per game, yards per game, and third down conversion percentage. I mean, listen, he's been brought in to, fix this Eagles offense. And, I think the Eagles have a ton of talent. I shouldn't say I think. I know the Eagles have a lot of talent. They kind of took a step back this year. I know that's, the biggest complaint with the Eagles was the play calling on the offensive side of the ball, or one of the biggest complaints. Why A.J. Brown wasn't getting the ball a lot. And obviously, again, go back to, the first game against Tampa in the regular season. Him and Hurts, having that discussion on the sideline. He wants to get more involved, which, again, a lot of these wide receivers, they're going to do that. But, yeah, I mean, play calling, was a problem this year. And, also the fact that the Eagles didn't run the ball as well as they did the previous year. Because DeAndre Swift, I mean, I thought he did well for them this year at times, but it was inconsistent at certain points during the season. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what Kellen Moore can do. I mean, he's been a play caller for quite some time now, and like I said, with the Cowboys who have a loaded offense, the Eagles have a loaded offense. He's coming from the Chargers. Obviously, it was disappointing because he had injuries and a bunch of other stuff going on there. But I feel like with this talent that the Eagles have, I feel like with Kellen Moore, I think that could be a decent fit. I don't know. That's just me. Because the Eagles, their offense dropped from 3rd to 7th in points per game. This is from the previous year. 9th to 16th in passing yards per game, and 5th to 8th in rushing yards per game. So, yeah, and obviously with Jim Harbaugh coming in, he wants to bring in a new staff. So Kellen Moore, he left. So, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, listen, like I said, the Eagles have a ton of talent on offense, so I feel like they're going to find success. I mean, the other thing, too, is, I jotted down some notes. Well, didn't really jot down notes, but in what I was reading, Jalen Hurts, career high, 15 interceptions this season, which it's not good. It's not good. So Kellen Moore, again, is going to be tasked with trying to, get this offense back to what it was the previous season when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. So, we'll see what ends up happening. So some other news as well. This actually also has to. This is another thing I just wanted to touch upon, even though it's not really coaching; it's more front office. So the Chargers, they're hiring Joe Hoyt as the. I hope that's how you pronounce his name, as the director of. He was the director of player personnel for the Ravens. Now he's going to be the new general manager for the Chargers. So the Ravens kind of the Chargers took him. Harbaugh took him from his brother, and now he's going to be the general manager for the Chargers. And the cap situation is not great. The Chargers are projected to be $54.2 million over the cap for next season. So there's going to be some tough decisions that they're going to have to make. A lot of these veteran guys that are making a lot of money, they might not be back next year. But I feel like they're going to do everything they can to try to keep as many players as they can. Because, you talk about Eckler and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and Derwin James and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all these guys. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep everybody, if they can find a way. Maybe if these guys are willing to take, pay cuts, of course, and, they could rework their salaries, then maybe it's possible. Because, teams have been able to, figure it out. But I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know. For me, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep everybody. But I don't know. Then some news with the Falcons. So they named Zach Robinson to be their new offensive coordinator. So he's going to be joining Raheem Morris. This is a guy that came over from now. He's coming over from the Rams. He's a former quarterback. Has been with the Rams organization since 2019. He was assistant quarterbacks coach. He was promoted to pass game coordinator, quarterbacks coach in 2022, and now he's going to be joining the Falcons. In his first season as the Rams quarterbacks coach, I had to deal with Matthew Stafford and the Rams. They were ravaged by injuries in 2022. And then, obviously, the following season, the Rams made the playoffs. They surprised some people. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs, because, obviously, the roster isn't as loaded as it was for the Super Bowl. But you saw Puka Nacua emerge. You saw Kyron Williams take a step, in his second year. So, the Rams, they overachieved, and now they're going to be a team that's going to be good next year, you would think. And obviously it helps when you have Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp back because they were both injured last year. So, he's going to come in. The Falcons, listen, they don't have a quarterback right now, but you're coming into an offense. You're going from the Rams that have weapons to now the Falcons that have weapons, but now you just kind of need that quarterback. So, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, again, that's just another coordinator being hired. Then briefly touch upon Michigan. So they've named Sharon Moore as the new head coach. So he's going to be replacing Harbaugh. His contract is for 5 years. Base salary of $500,000 and $5 million on additional compensation in the first year. Both his salary and additional compensation will increase by 2% in the subsequent years. Now, obviously, he's someone that took over, when Harbaugh got suspended. He was the offensive coordinator and was the interim head coach in the 4 games when he was suspended. And they went 4-0, of course, including wins over Penn State and Ohio State. So that helped, maintain their undefeated record. So he joined Michigan in 2018 as the tight ends coach and had coaching stints at Central Michigan and Louisville before joining Harbaugh's staff. So, listen, he did a good job, obviously filling in. Michigan didn't skip a beat. They won all their games. So now it's going to be different next year. We'll see what now he could do as, the full-time coach. Obviously, with Harbaugh leaving, the program's going to maybe take a little bit of a hit, you would think. But I don't know. I mean, that's just me. That's me as an outsider saying that. I mean, it's got to have some impact, right? I mean, people would probably say, well, now they can't, cheat, because I know some people, still are going to bring that up. But yeah, so that's really it when it comes to. But obviously, I mean, Harbaugh, bringing a national championship to Michigan. I mean, he even said, like, he wants to now win a Lombardi. So, he was. I think, for him, that's kind of been something that's been sitting in the back of his mind for a while, is to get back to the NFL and win a Super Bowl. Because now he won a national championship in college. Now he's back in the NFL trying to win a Super Bowl. So we'll see what he could do. Michigan, I mean, we'll see what happens next year. How it is with now, the post-Harbaugh era here. So, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, when it comes to, some of the coaching moves. More coordinator stuff, and obviously talked about, the Chargers with their new general manager. Again, they got a lot of work to do with the Chargers, especially with the cap situation. And there's only two job openings left in the NFL. It's the Commanders and the Seahawks. So, we'll see who ends up getting those jobs. But yeah, I mean, right now it doesn't look like Bill Belichick's going to have a job next year, which it's crazy to think about. But I don't think it's going to be the last we hear of Belichick. I think he's going to get another job. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year because of what, how the landscape is looking, but I don't think he's just going to walk away. He's going to find a way to get back in, because there's always head coaching jobs that are opening. I mean, somebody's got to take a chance, so we'll just have to wait and see. And maybe he's really got to say, you know what, maybe I got to take a step back and, not have as much control on the operation as as he normally did. So, but only time will tell. So we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to have our GOAT quarterback discussion. So, again, it's not really going to be me claiming, Patrick Mahomes as being the GOAT, but I mean, what he's been able to do these past 6 years has been unbelievable, and it's really if he gets a Super Bowl here, his third ring, I mean, then you start having that discussion. I mean, you're already having those discussions, but if he wins another one, that just only makes the discussion continue. So that's what we'll talk about when we come back from our first break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about, we'll have a GOAT quarterback discussion here. So, again, we got 2 weeks that we got to fill before we get to the Super Bowl. So, obviously, this is kind of one of those conversations that people are going to continue to have. So, listen, I mean, what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do since he's became the starting quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs has been unbelievable. I mean, he's been in the conference championship game all 6 years. Now he's going to be playing in his 4th Super Bowl. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. One of the crazy stats is the fact that he has the same amount of playoff wins as Peyton Manning. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do in a short amount of time. And a lot of people say, including me, is, if he retired, I mean, he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's had a Hall of Fame career in a 6-year span. I mean, it's unbelievable. Of course, you had the MVPs to that. For me personally, obviously, I've only been watching football for a certain amount of time. I obviously was not around for the Joe Montana, John Elway, Dan Marino era, all those, back when, my parents tell me that was when football was football, and it wasn't, watered down a little bit with obviously flags and, the protection that the quarterbacks now have. It's a different game. And I agree with that. So, when it comes to like my list, I would say I'm only ranking like the quarterbacks that I watched growing up. And Mahomes is in the top 3. I mean, top 2. He's already, like, I was having that discussion with my friends in our sports chat, and for me, like, I know that for some of them they weren't going to put Mahomes over Breeze and Rodgers because of the longevity. I'm already there. Like, he's already over both of them, and I think I think especially if he wins this Super Bowl. I mean, I don't think there's really anything to discuss. I mean, he's got 3 rings. I mean, Breeze and Rodgers have won 1. Peyton Manning's won 2, but the second one that he won was carried by the Broncos defense that year. So I would put Mahomes at 2. I mean, Mahomes is at 2 already. It's that, but that's the kind of career that he's had again in the short period of time. Now, the one thing that I don't like is that when it comes to now him getting into the discussion with Tom Brady, because most people are going to say Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. There are some people that don't. I would probably say I would say he is, because of the accolades and I mean, in clutch moments he's one of those quarterbacks that you want to have. And the amount of comebacks that he's been a part of. I mean, you go back to the 28-3 game. Now, again, that had a lot to do with the Falcons self-destructing. But you know what? If that was any other quarterback, I don't think they're coming back. I think Tom Brady had to be the guy to do it, because you can't count. If you have Tom Brady as your quarterback, you're never out of it. You're not, and he's proved that time and time again. But I don't like how people are just like, well, there's no chance Mahomes could be the GOAT because Brady's 2-0 against him in the playoffs. Okay. So, can we just context I think matters. And I said that yesterday and it's true. Somebody else, one of my friends said, you could say that about anything. And that is absolutely true. You could say that about anything. But here, so you're just saying, oh, he's 2-0 against Mahomes in the playoffs. So there's no way, he could be better than Brady. Well, can we talk about these two specific games? So the AFC Championship game, right? That game went back and forth in the fourth quarter. I mean, the Patriots were winning most of the game, and then the Chiefs' offense woke up. The Chiefs actually got shut out in the first half of that game. But then they woke up. They went ahead. They tied the game or whatever. They went ahead, and it was back and forth. Then the game went to overtime, and the Patriots got the ball. They went right down the field, scored a touchdown. Mahomes never saw the ball in overtime. Okay. Now, again, both quarterbacks played great in that game. So it took overtime for Brady to beat Mahomes. Okay. So then we go to the Super Bowl. Listen, Brady had a good game. He did. But didn't really have to do that much because the Bucs defense was the MVP of that Super Bowl. The Bucs defense is the reason why the Bucs won that Super Bowl. Brady was a part of it. But I mean, Mahomes was missing both of his tackles. He was running for his life that entire Super Bowl. I mean, Jim Nantz even said it, like those exact words on the telecast. Running for his life. I mean, he's like, he's running backwards and he's about to get tackled. He's throwing it up. I mean, he's still, trying to, will his team back. And again, they ran into a better team. Now, again, the Bucs were a very good team that year. The first 2 years with Brady in Tampa, that was a very good team. There was some growing pains the first year, but of course they were able to figure it out and they won the Super Bowl. But I think context matters. Like, Mahomes was missing both of his starting tackles. It's hard. I mean, Brady's offensive line, you look at what he was able to do. I mean, he had all day to throw. That matters. And so to say that there is no chance that Mahomes could pass Brady, I think is ridiculous. I think if Mahomes continues to do this and he continues to win rings, you got to have that conversation. I mean, listen, Tom Brady's had some bad playoff losses too. I mean, obviously he lost to Eli twice in the Super Bowl. He lost to Nick Foles, who was a backup quarterback. I mean, Mahomes, the only players that have beaten him in the playoffs is Brady twice with the Bucs and the Patriots, and Joe Burrow. And we'll see what happens further down the line. Because you got to remember, the Patriots went 10 years without winning a Super Bowl. Brady won 3 rings, his first, 4 or 5 years in the league. And then there was that long gap where he didn't win anything. And then it wasn't until the 2014 season where he, finally won a Super Bowl. And it was because the Seahawks didn't run it, and, Malcolm Butler gets the pick, and that started the second half of the dynasty. But, I mean, listen, I don't think you could just say, well, he's, Brady's 2-0 against him in the playoffs. I mean, even look at the regular season matchups. The first game that they played against each other, the Patriots won the game. Final score was 43-40. I mean, for the most part, Mahomes has played well in all the games that he's played against Brady. The only game you could really say is probably the Super Bowl, and maybe one other game. Because I know the 2019 game, that wasn't very high scoring, and the Patriots, they got off to a really good start that year, but offensively, Gronk retired. I mean, Edelman was aging. Jacoby Myers, N'Keal Harry, that team, that loss to the Titans in the first round, that wasn't a great team. But for the most part, I mean, these games have been against involving those two quarterbacks. For the most part, have all been great. All filled with drama. But, I don't think we could just sit here and say, well, if Mahomes continues to do this every single year and he starts right, and, if he wins again this year, that's 3, you gotta, he's got to be a part of the conversation. You can't just be like, well, he, again, 2-0 Brady was 2-0 against him in 2 playoff games. I just feel like that's a silly argument. Because, again, context. I mean, it's not like Mahomes didn't show up. You could say Mahomes showed up in the Super Bowl. I mean, again, he's like flying in the air, throwing a pass sideways, and, maybe the receiver holds on to it, and that's a touchdown. It's not like he didn't show up for those games. But I get it. But for me, I think context matters. I think it's important. But either way, what Mahomes has been able to do, again, is unbelievable. Again, we're in good hands with the quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. Now, got to see, somebody else from the AFC win something, because it's just been Mahomes. You had the Rams win it with Stafford, but Stafford is part of that, that previous, era. We got to see, Burrow win something, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, now with Harbaugh going to LA, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud just coming into the league. So, I don't want to get on him. But the Browns now with Deshaun Watson, even though, I'm not really, I don't really think he's going to, revitalize. I don't think we're going to see Deshaun Watson from the Texan days. I think those days are over. But still, we're in good hands with the talent, but every year it's Mahomes. So, in a year that we didn't think the Chiefs were going to get back to the Super Bowl, they did it. They did it. They get to the playoffs and they just flip the switch, and they're that same team. And listen, I think they're going to win it this year. I think they are. I know it's very early. We still got, a week and a half to decide. But listen, I already said, I want the 49ers to win, but the way the Chiefs are playing right now, I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to be that first team in a long time, since Tom Brady's Patriots, to repeat as champions. I do. I really think that's going to happen. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm fine with being wrong, because I want to see the 49ers win. But it's really hard. It's really hard to bet against the Chiefs, which, people do. Listen, I took them with the points, but I still said the Ravens were going to win. But you know what the difference is? It's because they got that dude. Also, the Chiefs have had a good defense this year. But, my sister and my mom are saying, the 49ers have all these weapons. I'm like, well, here's the thing. They don't have that guy. He's the equalizer. The Chiefs, on offense, you take Mahomes out, you got Kelsey, but who scares you on this offense? I guess Pacheco, but, the receiving core is just, you got Rashee Rice, a rookie, Valdez-Scantling, Justin Watson. There's not a lot. They don't scare you. Now, I think Rashee Rice is going to be a good player for them, but he's not a guy that scares you. You take Mahomes out of there, where's this team? So, I don't know. It's a discussion that's going to be had for a while. This is going to be the next Michael Jordan, LeBron James discussion. If Mahomes continues to rack up the rings, because he is on the doorstep of winning another one. So, but let me know what you guys think. I know this is something that people get annoyed at talking about, but again, just thought to give my opinion on the matter today. So before we go to our second break, just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we are going to talk about, Jared Goff and Dan Campbell addressing the media, talk about some of the things that they had to say, and that'll be the third topic of the show for the day. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third topic of the show, we are going to talk about Dan Campbell and Jared Goff addressing the media, kind of, talk about the Lions and their playoff loss to the 49ers more. For Dan Campbell, basically what I got out of it is, we can't be complicit. That's some of the things that I got from that. Can't be complicit, because it's hard to get back to this point, which is very true. I mean, he did say that, he told the team that this might be our only shot, and I think it's good to have a head coach that kind of puts things into perspective, and you don't have some of these head coaches that come in and they just sound so robotic. This guy is a leader. And I know a lot of people are very disappointed with, what happened in this game, that the Lions had this game. And, being overly aggressive kind of costed the Lions, a trip to the Super Bowl, which I agree. And we'll see if Dan Campbell, adapts and he doesn't go that route as much next year. Because, again, I think that could cost you, and it could cost your job. It could cost you your job. And the other thing, too, is another important thing that he was asked about is, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. One of the better play callers in the league. The Lions, listen, this Lions offense is good. I mean, we talked about the 49ers and their weapons. The Lions have weapons on that offense, too. And again, I talked about if this guy can, become more of a player. Jameson Williams, I mean, you see what he can do, with his speed. And, you look at what he did on that end around play. I mean, listen, he's shown flashes here and there, but it's that consistency. Because if he could become that number 2 guy to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, there's another weapon for you. So, but, with Ben Johnson probably going to leave. He's probably going to take one of those 2 head coaching positions, whether it's with the Seahawks or it's with the Commanders. Now, they did say on the telecast, Kevin Burkhardt did say that he's the favorite to get the Commanders job. He did say that. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's at least what I heard on the telecast. We'll see what happens. But, that's going to be a big loss. And, Dan Campbell said that. He said, we're not going to be in a rush. We're going to find the right guy for that. And he also said, the other things that he said, too, is, he wants to continue to build this roster and bring in guys that fit the culture. He said, it doesn't matter, when it comes to talent, you got to be able to fit the culture like the guys that they already have. And I think that's also important, too, because you don't want to bring in somebody that kind of, puts that causes a rift. You want someone that's going to buy in and follow, what this team's been able to do the last couple of seasons. But at the same time, if a player is not meeting the expectations of the team, he also said you don't want to get attached to a player. Like, you have to be able to make that decision and, let go of somebody if, they're not doing their job. It doesn't matter how much you like them. Because you go back to Craig Reynolds, their third running back. I mean, he was somebody that was kind of on the bubble to, getting cut, and they kept him because they just, he, buys into the culture, and they just felt like, I guess, that he had a role on this team. I mean, he did score a touchdown last week against the Bucs when they went for it on 4th and 1. And when Montgomery and Gibbs got hurt in the first Bucs game, he had to step in and be the lead rusher, even though he didn't really run for a ton of yards. But still, if there's someone that doesn't really have a role on the team and, they're not really producing and you got to make a tough decision, you got to do that. It's hard. and that's the business aspect of it. But I mean, he really, and he also just talked about how they just got outplayed in all three phases of the game, and he was saying how, usually if there's one aspect of the game that's lacking, the others pick them up. But he said in this case, with the collapse against the 49ers, all three phases just collapsed. I mean, special teams, offense, and defense. I mean, the 49ers, once the momentum shifted to them, it was game over for the Lions. They kicked a field goal. Then you had, Ayuk with the big catch. And actually, funny thing with that, so he was watching, Ayuk, posted a video of him watching, ESPN doing their top 10, and his catch was not number 1. It was number 2. The Lamar Jackson reception when it got batted up in the air and he caught it, that was number 1. So he wasn't happy about that, but I just wanted to touch upon that. But, Ayuk makes that catch, and then, they get the McCaffrey touchdown, and then immediately after that, Gibbs fumbles. And then they score on that, and, that was basically it. I mean, that lead evaporated so fast for the Lions. And, they just didn't make plays. I mean, Josh Reynolds, you got to hold on to the ball, man. I mean, if you catch that, but at the same time, you should have took the points. Even Tom Brady said that. We just talked about Brady. He even said you got to take the points in that situation. But, I think Josh Reynolds also should catch the ball. These guys got to catch the ball. The drops also were costly in this game. But, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a Dan Campbell guy. I hope this doesn't lead to kind of a downward spiral for him as the coach of the Lions, because you know what? He's gotten them this far. I mean, again, the Lions haven't been able to they never, hosting back-to-back home playoff games and winning a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. You're, on the doorsteps of getting to a Super Bowl. I mean, I just, who else is going to do that? Who are you going to get if Lions fans or whoever wants Dan Campbell gone because of, the coaching decisions? Who are you going to bring in that's going to do a better job? Who? And again, it also helps when you have good coordinators, because that's why, losing Ben Johnson, we'll see what the Lions look like next year when he's not the offensive coordinator. Because again, you look at what happened with the Eagles, and when they lost Gannon and Shane Steichen. The team was not the same, and they collapsed at the end of the season. So I like what he said, that they're not going to rush. And exactly, you don't want to rush into a decision. But odds are he's going to be gone. And rightfully so. Look what he's been able to do with this offense. So we'll see. But listen, I understand Lions fans and their pain, but I think you got to take a step back and say, look at the season that we had. He was one of the main reasons for that. Let's see now what happens next year. Because now if the Lions go on a tailspin, then maybe you do have to have that conversation. But I don't know. I still think this team is going to be good. Next, it's going to be tougher though. He is right when he says, this could be our only shot, because the conference will be better next year. Your division is going to be better next year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But also with Jared Goff, what's interesting is, so he's entering a contract year. So it isn't a guarantee that he's going to be. Now, I figure him and the Lions are going to work something out. Because what Jared Goff has been able to do, he's improved pretty much every season that he's been the Lions quarterback. The first year was rough. Second year, they improved the second half of the year, almost made the playoffs. This year, you make it to the NFC Championship game, and he played well in all three playoff games. Listen, and the Rams traded him to get Stafford. They won the Super Bowl. Stafford never got the Lions to this point. Jared Goff did. So I think he's got to be their guy moving forward. Now, I think this is going to be a discussion that they're going to have, of course, and eventually I think a deal is going to work out. But I just thought that was interesting because he said like he would love to be back, but it's it's not in his control. He loves the players, loves the staff, but it's not in his it's not in his control. But I think you have to. I mean, you got to bring him back, right? I mean, because again, look how far they got. But you do kind of wish that the Lions were able to get it done and get to the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, I think it means a lot to him, what he's been through the last couple of years. And, his old team kind of just said, yeah, you're not going to get us to where we want to go. And even though he did get them to the Super Bowl, it's just, didn't play well. And that's motivated him. I mean, they beat the Rams, and he played well. He played well against the Bucs, and he played well in this game, against a tough defense. That's kind of owned him, at points in his career. So, I mean, well, at least when the 49ers became a really good team, because before that, I mean, the Rams would beat them the previous couple of seasons that he was the QB. But yeah, I just think they gotta they'll work something out. They'll work something out. And he proved some doubters wrong because it looked like again he was looked to be a kind of a bridge quarterback, and no, he's the guy. He's the guy going forward. And the fan base loves him. I mean, Jared Goff chants at the NFC Championship game Sunday. So they love him. I mean, you got a young team. You got two studs at running back. You got a stud at wide receiver. You stud at the tight end spot. The offensive line is solid. You got to continue to build up that defense and get another weapon. To throw to opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, Jameson Williams is a player that could be that because we've seen some sparks here and there of that, but we're just looking for that consistency. So, the Lions aren't going anywhere. But again, conference is going to be harder next year. The division is going to be tough, especially with the Bears, the Packers, and depending on what the Vikings do at quarterback. You bring back Kirk Cousins. I mean, to go back, and a healthy T.J. Hawkinson who got surgery recently on his ACL and MCL. Because he got hurt late in the season. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all those guys. Kirk Cousins comes back healthy. I mean, that team's going to be tough. I mean, the Vikings, they looked like they were going to make the playoffs at one point. So it's going to be tougher. But the Lions are a really good team. And, if they continue to build this team right and you keep this core together, they could find themselves back in this position next year. So we'll see. But I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because I honestly didn't really think about Goff's contract situation. But I mean, I would think that the Lions would bring him back. I would think the Lions are gonna try to extend him to a long-term deal. Because listen, it is hard. I mean, you see some of these teams, they are struggling to find their franchise guy. And listen, is Jared Goff, on the level of, the top guys, Patrick Mahomes? No. But you know what? He's in that I would say he's in like that second tier. I think so. Depending on how you rank him. Well, Mahomes is kind of in his own tier, if you really think about it. So maybe he's in like that third tier. So but he's a solid quarterback. Jared Goff is a solid quarterback. You give him the right weapons, you put him in the right system, he's going to produce, and that's what he's done. That's what he's done here. I mean, what quarterback is going to succeed if he's got basically nothing around him? No offensive line, no running game, nothing. No quarterback's going to be able to do that. But the Lions have been able to build this team up, and he played really well this year. So hopefully the Lions extend him. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we are then going to talk about the Chiefs and what is going on with Kadarius Toney, because that situation has been very strange. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Kadarius Toney because he's kind of been in the news recently, and I just wanted to touch upon that. Again, that's just another little storyline going into the Super Bowl. And Kadarius Toney actually made plays in last year's Super Bowl. I mean, he was a part of the punt return that set up a touchdown. I think it was his touchdown because he scored a touchdown. So, yeah, it made those were two big plays in the Super Bowl. Those were big. And, since then, it's kind of been a downward spiral for him. Because you go to week 1, Mahomes throws him a pass that he doesn't catch. It gets hit up in the air. Brian Branch, the safety of the Lions, picks it off, runs it back for a touchdown. That's 7. That, if that doesn't happen, the Chiefs probably win that game. Then also, again, Mahomes, throws to him. He's wide open. He drops it. And, he was probably the biggest reason why the Chiefs didn't win that game, the first game of the year. So that's that's a win that the Chiefs should have had. There's also, again, against the Patriots, a game they won that Mahomes throws him a pass. He doesn't catch it. It gets picked off. And you could tell Mahomes is just visibly, upset on the sideline about it. And also he's a part of, the play that really set Mahomes over the edge, and that was him clearly lining off sides. And, they run that play. Kelsey catches it, laterals it back to Toney, and there's nobody there, and Toney, runs it in for a touchdown. And you thought, okay, well, the Chiefs are going to win this game. And I, missed that whole sequence because I was out. And, then they obviously called offensive offsides. Mahomes is complaining about it. I mean, he's, it looked like he wanted to fight the refs, slamming his helmet on the ground. I know, but listen, I get it why some people are just, that's why some people have kind of had it with Mahomes is that. But I also think it had to do with frustration with the receivers and, how they've been playing this year. Because, I mean, again, led the league in drops. And I think Mahomes, was holding all that in, and this kind of just, set him over the edge. So I think that was part of it. But, and now with Kadarius Toney, he just has not played. Now, he's claiming that he's been healthy. It's just the Chiefs have not activated him. Now, Andy Reid was asked about it in an interview, and, they said, he's on the injury report. We're going to see, how he is, and then, he'll be back. Something along the lines of that. But I don't know. Is he going to play in the Super Bowl? I have no idea. But you know what? I think, part of the reason why the Chiefs have been able to win recently is because he hasn't been playing. I believe that. The Chiefs have been rolling. And you know what? Maybe you don't want a guy that, has been a problem this year when it comes to drops. Maybe you don't want him coming back. Because, listen, I have no problem. Listen, if I'm the Chiefs, I don't even play him. I make him a healthy scratch. I'm trying to look for his injury history because I was looking at that last night because he has a ton of injuries over the years. Let's get to the NFL. I mean, ankle injury, a lot of ankle injuries, shoulder, a lot of hamstring injuries. This year's the ankle, I think ankle and shoulder. No, it's ankle and I don't know. It's always just for the most part, it's leg injuries, even though I just said shoulder. But yeah, it's an interesting situation with what's going on there in Kansas City. But it's just he's a guy that's been injured a lot, and then when he plays, it's just it's been a disaster. At least this year was a disaster. But he's claiming that he's healthy and that they're just not playing him. But you know what? I mean, there's been off the field stuff with him too. I mean, he's been getting in it with Giant fans. It's just, he's probably going to find himself, not being with the team after this year. I mean, the Chiefs are probably going to move off of him. And I remember on, Kelsey's podcast, the Kelsey Brothers podcast, the New Heights, Kelsey was saying, saying that he didn't understand why the Giants got rid of him. Well, I think you understand now. That's why the Giants got rid of him. And listen, he had that great game against the Cowboys. Yeah, I think he had almost 200 yards receiving. That was his rookie year. And you thought, man, this guy's going to be a good player. But it was a downward spiral after that. Then he had a few good games with the Chiefs last year. And of course the Super Bowl. And you thought, okay, well maybe his trajectory is going up now. Nope, fell off a cliff. And I don't know. I wouldn't play him in the Super Bowl. Why? Why would you? Because what if, like, this game with the 49ers comes down to, that last possession, and Mahomes, is scrambling, and he's got to look for somebody. He sees Toney, he throws it to Toney, and Toney, bobbles it, and it gets picked off by Fred Warner. And then you're like, oh, no. You just cannot. They cannot let that happen. He is not. He will not play in this Super Bowl. He's not. Andy Reid can say whatever he wants. That we're going to see how we go. No, they are not. They are not going to play him for this game. They're not, because he has not helped them this year. He has hurt them. He is the direct cause of 2 losses: the offsides and the Week 1 game. Those are 2 more wins right there. So, and listen, and especially when the Chiefs got this momentum and how they've been playing, in the playoffs, they look like a completely different team. And I think part of the reason is because that guy is not playing right now. So he should be nowhere near the Super Bowl unless, he's on the sidelines as a healthy scratch. Or, he's claiming that he's healthy. I don't know. But should not play in this game. But you know what? He's been a head case. He's been a head case. He was a head case with the Giants, and he's a head case with the Chiefs. So that's 2 chances right there. So I don't know if you're going to get another chance. You might have to play in the the UFL, which is starting in the spring. So and I was talking about this with my mom too, and it's like why do some of these guys continue to act like this? Because if you act like this, you're really going to hurt your chances of getting another shot. And yeah, your off the field behavior is going to lead to that too. He was like Instagram living, and he was saying that he's healthy. Well, listen, maybe if you weren't a head case, and maybe if drops weren't an issue for you, maybe maybe you would be playing in some of these games. Maybe, it could be it could just be like a phantom thing where it's like he's not really, maybe he isn't hurt. Maybe they just don't want to play him. Honestly, I'm fine. I wouldn't play him. The way the Chiefs have been playing, you want to bring him in, and like I just said, and I don't think it's going to happen. The other thing too is they could just activate him and not play him. Like he just is on the sidelines, because that happens too. They've used him on some running plays too, but he could fumble. And why are you going to? Because you got Isaiah Pacheco, who's been running the football great for them. And you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire that can run the football too as their backup. You don't need Kadarius Toney. You don't need him for this game. You don't. So I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on. But I just thought it was interesting because he's claiming that he's healthy, but the Chiefs are saying, well, you're on the injury report, and they just have But if you would have just maybe played better, then you would be a part of this team, but you didn't. You were kind of responsible for 2 losses. So, and you could probably throw in another one in there too. But those are the 2 biggest ones. Is Week 1 and the Bills game where he lined up offsides. You don't do that, and you catch that pass late in the game in Week 1. Harrison Butker hasn't missed, except really once, and kind of needed him to hit that field goal because I needed to advance to my fantasy championship. I don't know how many times I mentioned that, but I'm still very bitter about it. That's a loss that's going to haunt me for a long time. Is that if Butker kicks that field goal against the Raiders on Christmas and he makes it, I'm in the championship. And not only that, I win the championship and I get my 4th ring. And I probably walk away. I say, you know what? I'm going to retire on top. No, I don't know. No, I love fantasy. I love fantasy and I hate fantasy. But yeah, I mean that's a separate thing. But anyways, that's what happens is I go off on tangents. But yeah, with Kadarius Toney, I mean I don't know what else is there to say. You had your chance. And for a lot of players, including him, you don't really get that many chances. And this could be it. So that's another guy that might have to adapt. Maybe say, you know what, I got to tone it down a little bit here because I might not get another chance. But the other thing too is availability. He is not available. He gets hurt every single year. He gets hurt every year. That's the other thing. You keep getting hurt, you're not going to get a shot either. But that's a different thing. I mean, but you could at least help the cause by not Instagram living that you're healthy and you're starting beef with the Chiefs. You're starting beef with the Chiefs. Different with the Giants. The Giants have been, people call them a poverty franchise for the last 10 years. Maybe a little less than that. But still, for me, ever since the Super Bowl, that's kind of where they are. But with a few outlier seasons. But now you're starting beef with the Chiefs, a team that goes to the has been in the AFC Championship game now 6 consecutive seasons, and you're going to start beef with them? Listen, if you can't make it with the Chiefs, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So, again, that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, this could be it for Kadarius Toney. I mean, I don't think he's playing in the Super Bowl. But I mean, even if he could be active, let's say, but barely going to touch the field. Because if they activate him. If he is active. If he's not active, then, but what the Chiefs got going is, they don't want him throwing a wrench in that because, again, it's part of some bad losses for them this year. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, we'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure to tune in. Again, we've got some time before the Super Bowl, so it's just going to be Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. There's at least going to be, one Super Bowl topic on the show. And then then after the Super Bowl, it's going to get tough because it's like, now what? Because then obviously there's some time before the draft and, the schedule coming out and preseason. I mean, it's free agency too. Don't forget about that. There's a lot. There's a lot that'll be discussed throughout the off season, but there's going to be some times where it's going to be tough. So, we just got to prepare for it. So, but let me know what you guys think about this Kadarius Toney situation. Let me know what you guys think about all the topics that we discussed today. What are your thoughts? But yeah, that's basically pretty much it for the show. So, with that being said, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.